Hello everyone, this is CJNovo992 and today we're back for another brand new video. Now this is normally the part I sit in front of you and says we've got to take the high of European football and the great performance and somehow find a way to bleed that over and translate that into domestic success and a domestic performance, but I can't even say that these days as our domestic form has followed us into Europe and now we're back to domestic. 2025 Rangers might genuinely break me. Now speaking of, by the way, there will be a slight delay to the upload regarding the St Mirren reaction video, win, lose or draw. By the way, because of this weird history this game had, it was supposed to be on a Saturday, then it was postponed, then it got randomly placed on the Sunday. Well, guess what day a month ago I had arranged a certain piece of content to go up and started where I go out there and play every single club in the SPFL's content creators to a game of football. Guess the day I planned that for? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I thought I was safe on a Sunday because the game was supposed to be Saturday, then it was postponed, but just my luck, it gets dropped right on the very same day. But thankfully I'm still able to watch the St Mirren game and still able to do the piece of content because we've got a lot of players coming, a lot of content creators, the cameramen and all that are all coming for the game of football, which will be uploaded on the channel probably in like TikTok and all that in a couple of weeks time. The first episode is going to be playing Hearts, then it's going to be Celtic if Ryan118 actually turns up for the game of football, so that will be very interesting. But that's the plan for that, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be able to watch the game, take my notes, but then I need to go and do that piece of content, so I'll be uploading my reaction for St Mirren later on the day, probably about 8, 9, 10 o'clock, etc. And aye, let's hope we're ending Sunday night with a smile on our face. Right, guys? But I just wanted to explain that before we dive in to today's video, in case you didn't see an upload for 7-8 hours after the game. You think vegan balls finally got him. A bit of broccoli has broke our boy. Nah, I'll see yous on Sunday night. But speaking of Sunday, that gives me the perfect transition into going ahead and discussing this game of football, because yes, we have the oppositional preview breakdown, but we also have a lot of things we really need to dissect and get into regarding the Rangers end. But before we dive into that scary piece of lava, let's go ahead and start off with the oppositional preview then, shall we? And starting off, as my current time of recording today's video, we are going to be talking about the team that's sitting 10th in the SPFL, or the top flight SPFL, and that is of course none other than St Mirren. And it's interesting, right, because they sit 10th in the league thanks to the only point they've picked up so far this season, which was against familiar foe in terms of Dundee, who took a point off us this season. Speaking of a point off, by the way, St Mirren also just sit 1 point shy of us so far this season. Us and Motherwell. I hate football, honestly I do, man. It's just depressing. But before I turn all the lights out and listen to Everybody Hurts by REM again, let's carry on with the video then, shall we? And starting off with St Mirren's overall weird start to the season, right? Because we spoke briefly about the league form, but if you go into the Scottish League Cup group stage and everything like that and seeing how they've been getting on, St Mirren started the season off with a shambolic loss versus Arbroath, where it went to penalty kicks and they ended up getting beat in the game of football. Now granted, St Mirren did end up having a red card as O'Hara got sent off around about the 88th minute, but let's not minimalise what a tremendous result and performance that was for Arbroath, taking him all the way to penalties and then having the quality and calmness and balls to wave goodbye to St Mirren. Tremendous result for them and brought up a lot of questions to St Mirren, like, how is that gone ahead and happening? Well, they were quick to silence the doubters over the next couple group stage games as they went ahead and beat Forfar 2-1, which is a lot more controlled than it actually sounds regarding the game, as Forfar grabbed one late on the game of football. It was already done and dusted at that point. But then St Mirren reminded everyone that they can also be very dangerous on their day as they went ahead and scored 8 in the next game as they beat Annan Athletic 8-2. Now I know what you're thinking, I never 8-2 nothing, but they did on that day as scants were pulled. A fantastic performance with fantastic goals scored on the day, and they finished up the group stage games with another very comfortable 2-1 win versus Ayr, where again the scoreline doesn't really tell you the story of the game. And that was their group stage, that was their run, that's the momentum they built up. Now I know what you're sitting there thinking, wait a minute CJ, you look at the level they're playing, the teams that they're playing, they should be going ahead and beating these teams, they should be performing very well. Dare I need to remind everyone by the name of Alloa. It doesn't matter about the level of oppositions or who is in front of you. It needs to be still a good performance. You still need to work hard, try and make sure you put in a performance. And more so than no this season, especially at the start of the season, St Mirren were doing what they needed to do. And on that side, beside the little mixed bag of a shock loss versus Arbroath. So they took that little tombola into their first league match of the season with some ups, but also they are down here as well. And they went ahead and travelled to Parkhead on opening day of the season, which can go very, very wrong very, very quickly. But to be fair, St Mirren stood firm, dogged, and put their heart and soul and blocked every single ball. And up to the 87th minute of the game of football, it looked like they were going to get an almost unrecognisable 0-0 draw at Parkhead. You know, unrecognisable unless you're a side 288th in the ranking and from Kazakhstan. But St Mirren unfortunately weren't for Kazakhstan on that day, ladies and gentlemen, as Luke McCowan came off the bench and put the ball into the back and net with a long range effort. However, that 0-0, they were robbed thanks to that goal from Luke McCowan. They went ahead and got the following week as they followed up that fantastic performance at Parkhead with maybe more middle of the road style stalemate as they went ahead and drew 0-0 with again familiar foe Motherwell in a game of football that was absolutely horrendous to look into, ladies and gentlemen. It really was painful. To give you an example of how bad it was, there was more yellow cards given on the day than shots on target. Aye, rough to say the very least. So you look at that wee period, you look at that pattern they played, them not scoring or creating any opportunities. Is it any wonder every Tom, Dick and Harry had Hearts on their coupon in the next game that St Mirren went ahead and played, despite St Mirren being at home versus Hearts in the cup competition? Everyone was expecting the Jam Tarts to go there and get a result, but that did not happen, ladies and gentlemen. Is one of the most maddest things in football I've ever seen went ahead and happened, as Gogic went ahead and scored an overhead kick. What type of alternative universe am I living in that Baldylocks has gone ahead scoring overhead kicks? So they've scored basically any goals domestically up to that point, and the first goal they bag is an absolute worldie for that guy of all guys. It's crazy, ladies and gentlemen, but unfortunately that goal was good enough to win them the game straight out, as Hearts obviously did come back in it. But St Mirren went ahead and held the nerve that they never early on in the season with a low start penalty shootout versus Arbroath. They held their nerve and they sent the Edinburgh side home packing. So you go ahead and look at everything we've talked about so far, right? They started the season off, they started their campaign off with a penalty shootout, right? Their most recent game of football went to another penalty shootout. For the league starting so far domestically, they haven't scored a goal. The fact that we can say all that, I sit here and look you directly in the eyes and tell you I'm absolutely terrified tomorrow and nerve driven, just really underlines how bad we are these days. And you know, that's truthfully all I've really got to add regarding the St Mirren side. They've not really made a big eye-watering signing or changed too much from what we're probably expecting. For me, I've said this many times on the channel, but St Mirren is the Gogic test. Do we want it enough? Are we going to meet his desire, his work rate and his effort? Is we going to match his commitment in the game of football? When we have done, we've usually been good enough and got the points. When we half-arse it, sleepwalking, look about like we've never played football, then there is the frustration. So this one is known as the Gogic test, and he is obviously the key man for me in my personal opinion. I like O'Hara as well, very, very tidy player on the football. But again, will we work harder? Will we get into the battle? Will we get into the faces of the likes of Gogic? I guess we'll find out over the next 24 hours, ladies and gentlemen, because we know they'll be up for it. Will we? That's the question that's on every single Rangers fan's lips and every single Rangers fan's minds since the start of the season, because you could argue versus Motherwell and Dundee, it's no been. Well, St Mirren up there with the record they've got and the frustration they can pile on any frickin' team will really need to be at it. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's us done and dusted with the St Mirren side. Let's get to the Rangers side. And it's really weird to sit here in front of you guys feeling the way I do right now and knowing what's getting said and knowing what's getting done, because again, it wasn't too long ago. It's still the summer the new, technically, but it wasn't so long ago, early on in the summer, that the takeover happened. The excitement was at its peak. We were so excited. That weight was ripped away from our shoulders. We were moving away from the previous board. We started to go ahead and hire people that's actually got experience in the roles. You know what I mean? They weren't the watermen or guys that put the cones and bibs about that were suddenly in charge of major departments within our football club. We had stripped all that away, and there was just that bubbling excitement, and there was that enthusiasm for where we could go, and that enthusiasm lasted about 7 days until we hired Russell Martin. And again, we've already went over this or any of that, but there was a lot of questions, there was a lot of frustrations, and there was a lot of worry about him being the manager, and it almost went two ways, ladies and gentlemen. You know what I mean? There was one side, it was like, he's going to fail, this isn't going to work, I'd start looking for the new manager, the new, whilst others were like, well, he's here now, let's hope he's a success, let's get behind and let's go fricking forward and hope he is the guy. And because of recent performances, because of recent results, I think more and more people are tipping in this direction. I mean, myself personally, that's all I get asked, whether it's in the street or whether it's in the comment section. Like, how long do you think Martin's going to last, CJ? It's not going to last much. Like, do you think it's the Celtic game, CJ? Do you think if he gets beat off St Mirren, he's gone? That's the question that I continually get asked, so I'm going to address it very, very quickly. I don't think Martin goes if he loses versus St Mirren. I don't think Martin goes if he get beat off Club Brugge again. I don't think Martin goes even if we get beat off Celtic, because I just don't think the new owners will pull the trigger just yet and hold their hands and be like, look, your first major decision in terms of this football club, we've had an absolute stinker. I think they are in the understanding, and I think they see it as this is a massive, massive problem we have at the football club, and it isn't just Russell Martin. There's a clear decline in terms of the quality year upon year upon year, and there is a lot of mistakes. It isn't an overnight fix. It isn't going to be magically fixed and we're going to be head and winning undefeated trebles and everything going ahead and doing any stuff like that. We are miles away from it, right? And I go back to 5 years ago now when Steven Gerrard, who was soaked in champagne after delivering a league title, pretty much sat in the seats, the Ibrox, with a microphone in his hand, begging the previous board to fix the roof before it started to leak. Well, 5 years on, 5 managers, massive mistakes, massive blunders, massive contracts handed out to duffers. I think it's fair to say that roof isn't half leaking right now, but it's went beyond that as we're sitting here looking like Atlantis, as we've been absolutely drowned in the decline of your football club. And I think when you take your heart and soul out of it and you just look at it probably fairly, you look at that dreadful wage bill, you look at the squadded players, you look at the transfer mistakes we've made again, and there's no wonder we're in the mess that we're currently in. You know what I mean? We've kind of reaped what we've sowed, unfortunately, and it's ugly right now, and I think it's going to be ugly for a wee bit of a while now. Again, there's no guarantees that Russell Martin will ever be able to clean up the mess and really kick on and do it and be the guy we need him to be, but I do think the job, no matter who was in the dugout, if you look at these players and everything like that, there's a hell of a lot that really needs to be done. So that's how I feel regarding the situation right now, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think he will get sacked tomorrow. I don't think he'll get sacked on Wednesday. I don't think he'll get sacked again at the weekend. I just think we're in a long haul of ugliness right now, unfortunately. And I know a lot of people said, but CJ, there's been no managerial bounce. And that was a very interesting one for me, because I didn't even think about him coming in. Gio's had a bounce. Clement's had a bounce. Michael Beale's had a bounce. I wanted to go in and check that, because where is the managerial bounce? It was a great question down in the comment section below. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I went and dived into it, spent too long this week trying to figure out what the hell Russell Martin's managerial career actually looks at, and what I've been able to find is he's never had the managerial bounce at the start of his managerial career at any freaking club. MK Dons didn't have it. Swansea didn't have it. Didn't have it. But do you know what he has got, which is very, very weird and very, very unusual, is that every single club he started off poorly and started off with a lot of mistakes, and then just out of nowhere it clicked into gear and they started winning games, and they've even went on to break club records for undefeated runs, etc, etc, etc. So he seems to have his managerial bounce on a timed fuse, and it's very, very erratic. Now again, I would like to point out, I'm not sitting here cheerleading Russell Martin. I think you know how I feel. I was just asked a question, I went ahead and looked at it, and that's the pattern he's had at every single club. So as a Rangers fan, I'm hoping that pattern's going to continue and we're going to take off like this. But again, I sit and look at the dressing room and the same problems persist, in my personal opinion. Yes, we've brought in some talented young players. Yes, we've brought in this project. He could be son, he could be son, he could be son, but we need someone that's actually able to perform, and at least some resemblance experience. Anyway, where's the players that's been in title scraps before? Where's the players that's actually won things before in their careers? You know what I mean? Where's the guys that's had to go on a tough away day when it's gone to the wire, that's been able to stand up in that atmosphere and make sure their team gets the results so their team's gone ahead and been successful? Is there no wonder, ladies and gentlemen, this team continues to wilt when you look at what we've built our dressing room with? Like, it might be very blunt and it might be very harsh, but it's not as if we've been going ahead and signing serial winners here, there and everywhere. It's been project, it's been prospect, it's been project, it's been prospect, with nobody to actually lead them in the right direction, nobody to share their wisdom, share their experience and help these guys close the gap for being young promising player to where they need to go ahead to be. So for me, Russell Martin's system is a frustration. Russell Martin's system is really, really grating sometimes, but at the exact same time, the exact same problems we've had in our squad still haven't been resolved by this new board. This Kevin hasn't still went ahead and signed us an established number one centre half. Our back four is again made up of loans and a guy who's going to be leaving the football club unless he gets a bumper deal, which in my opinion he didn't deserve. Especially being a number one centre half. Now, use the money to go ahead and get a number one centre half. We still didn't have that guy that's going to be able to handle balls coming out the box, that can take responsibility and lead these players through set pieces and take them in tough away days. And again, for me, we still not got that striker that can handle the rough and tumble of Scottish football, that knows how to put the ball in the back of net, it can ruffle up some feathers and handle the likes of Gogic and all that stuff. The exact same gaps, the exact same holes are still there waiting to be filled. So, as again, any wonder that we're still struggling, still looking as painful as we have in previous years? It's not for me, in my personal opinion. There's definitely questions, there's definitely frustrations at Martin, yes, but it also needs to be in the other places as well, because where are these signings this club badly needs? That'd be a question I'd put in that way, you know what I mean? Yes, prospect, yes, project, yes, young laddie, they could all turn out to be very, very good players, but there was a very infamous quote years and years ago that Alan Hansen said, you can't win anything with kids. Now, the great Sir Alex went ahead and flipped it on his head and proved him to be wrong on that occasion, but when you sit and look at what we've been doing regarding our recruitment year upon year upon year, and the lack of success we've had, maybe Big Alan was onto something. I don't know, maybe I'm just rambling and not making any freaking sense, but that's just how I feel until I see the players actually signed that needs to be signed, with the profiles and the experience of winning things that can help create a winning culture in our dressing room, and maybe have a few leaders, a part of the leadership group that's went ahead and won things previously in their career, that maybe we'll see our club getting back to what it actually should freaking be. But that's how I feel regarding the Russell Martin situation, the Lackey signings, etc, etc. I've tried to cover around, I've sort of seen mostly mentioned to me when I'm buying some milk for Tesco, but that's us done and dusted, ladies and gentlemen, regarding that little aspect. Now we need to get to some latest team news, and then obviously get the predictions for the lineup, and then the predictions for the game. Now we have had some good news regarding getting some people off the old wage bill, as Cifuentes has went to Toronto. Does he know it snows out there? Do you know what I mean? Bring a big jacket, big man. You're gonna frickin' need it. You think Glasgow's cold? Wait to the winter, big yin. But anyway, moving on for him, you've got Ben Davies as well, expected to join Oxford, or has now officially joined Oxford on loan. Again, both of them's loans. It's frustrating because we're trying to push them up the door, but big silly signings in terms of the wages, and it's no translated to, so we're stuck with them until someone's willing to pay that. So they're both on loan, gets them out the way. Hopefully their salaries are covered, or at least most of them are. And Ridvan Yilmaz is expected to be leaving very, very soon, which we've kind of spoke to death right here on the channel. Just wasn't fancied at all by Russell freaking Martin. So yeah, there's some movement there. There needs to be a hell of a lot more, in my personal opinion, but I do think we're going to be very busy in the next week regarding transfers ins and transfers out. So hopefully all our frustrations get turned around, which would be very, very nice. But the only other team news you need to know regarding this game versus St Mirren is the fact that Cyril Dessers is still out of the game of football, which is good, because obviously we'll be back before the end of the transfer window, and if a bid does come in for him, I'd be quite happy to move that on and get somebody in my personal opinion. But that might just be me. Dessers is not back for this game, but he could be involved regarding Club Bruges. Regarding the old prediction, ons, I'm sorry to do it, but it's a cheeky channel favourite. 2-1. It's the most 2-1 game I've ever seen, ladies and gentlemen. And that's given St Mirren a goal. They've not scored all season so far in the league, but I guarantee they'll probably take the lead in the game. You know what I mean? That's just the way we go ahead and play. Hopefully we have enough. I think Danilo's going to score. Again, it would be great to see more of those low-driven crosses coming into the box. That's what he feeds on. That's what he reads. Didn't need long balls chipped into the back post. He's never beaten anybody to that. Keep drilling those crosses in. Let him his movement, which was brilliant in Club Brugge. His goal versus Club Brugge, go back and watch it. He fakes a run, runs. Love that for Danny. It'd just be good if we could see more of that attacking instincts. But aye, I'm not wanting to see our centre-backs having more passes. They are 150 passes, 140 passes, you know what I mean? One of the games we talked about, remember St Mirren versus Celtic? St Mirren had 258 passes or something like that. That's nearly as much as Souttar's been having, or just under it, ladies and gentlemen. Which is crazy to think about. Get the ball to our creative players. Do you know why Souttar's in space? Because they're setting traps for him. They're not scared of him. Get the ball to the creative players, the attacking players, score some goals. That would be very, very nice. But that's my thoughts and opinions on the game of football. I've tried to discuss St Mirren, I've tried to discuss Rangers, where we are right now, the frustrations that everyone's having, and then obviously the predictions for the game. What about you? Let me know your opinions as always down in the old comment section below. That would be greatly appreciated, as is those that are signed up to the Channel Legend memberships. Again, thank you all so much. I'm genuinely blown away from the support. I didn't expect anything like this, so from me to the thank you. The supporter range as well, like, it's so kind, man, as is the people that keeps these lights on, as I say at the end of every single video, by watching and tuning in and let me know, even if it's not the biggest, brightest lights in Europe, every preview you still tune in and spend some time with me. It's never taken for granted. Again, tomorrow I'll be uploading a wee bit later on because of the other game. I'm just trying to bring different wee fun bits of content, trying to provide some other stuff and a bit of a laugh as well. So aye, I'll see you tomorrow night, hopefully with a smile on my face, hopefully talking about a couple good goals. Nice. But until then, I've been CJ92. Thank you so much for watching. All the best and bye-bye.